Welcome. This is the first show of the Death Chicks, and I'm so pleased that you are here. It's been a really long journey getting here, long and short. My host, Patty Burgess.
Hello.
I hope I've said her name right. I've been practicing, but it's one of those things that, those little things that gets to you. So here we are, and the Death Chicks are all about bringing death out of the dark. We're starting conversations that have been kept in the closet and hidden away for too long, and we really want to bring it out and get people talking about it. We want to bring light to this topic, and we're here to share stories about positive experiences around death, dying, loss, and grief. Our first guest today is Heidi Hörnlein. She's very well known in the Google Hangout community, and we feel very blessed to have Heidi with us here today because she has been our super amazing technical guru, and if Heidi was not our first guest, I don't think we could have done this. So thank you deeply, Heidi.
Yes, thank you.
And before I introduce you to Patty, my wonderful co-host, and Heidi, I just want to say a little bit about how I met Heidi. It was quite some time ago when I first started, when I decided I was going to work in this field, and it was a calling that I resisted, but it kept calling me. So I started reaching out to people and saying, hey, at that time I was planning a radio show. So I was connecting with people who wanted to talk about this topic, and Heidi said she did. And at that time, Heidi was just starting out with Google+, and she was really excited about it. And I remember her telling me, like, it's this amazing forum, and da-da-da, there's all this excitement. And it's been really wonderful to watch Heidi grow as the months progress and to see how she is now on Google+. So I'm really happy to have her with us, and I'm really happy to be here too. So a little bit about my co-host, Patty. Patty does death differently, and Patty teaches transitions.com. So she works with both professionals and individuals to teach them hospice and how to provide end-of-life care, how to be with people when they're near their end time. So without further ado, I introduce you to my co-host, Patty Burgess.
Very good. Thank you so much, Myste. I am thrilled to be here. Heidi, thanks so much for your amazing support along this journey. This is very exciting to us. I also want to share with you a little bit about how Myste and I came together. We came together in a different forum, a business forum, and as I was scrolling through all the different people in this forum, I saw that there was one other person there talking about death. So I kind of guessed that at that time we really were the Death Chicks. We just didn't formalize it until now. So seeing Myste's work on sweetblessing.com, it made me realize that really there was a kindred spirit there. And to find somebody else that really wanted to talk about death, dying, grief, and loss, how to embrace this topic, how to, as we've said in our banners that we've put out on YouTube and Death Chicks, we're not making light of death. We're just bringing a little bit more light to death. And to find Myste and someone else that was working in this space was really, really terrific. So thrilled to be partnered with you, Myste. What I'd also like to do now is make a formal, I know many of you already know Heidi. She is doing amazing things on her Google Hangouts, but I'd like to give you a formal introduction, and this is partly for me because I'm just getting to know her as well. She has an amazing, diverse, and exciting background. She's a transformational coach, trained in Gestalt therapy, also is the Google Hangout host of the Wisdom Factory and the Connections Forum. Heidi, really, as a result of your coaching and your support, you're seeing us now, and if it weren't for you, it would probably be a blank screen or something behind there. So we thank you for that. You've got many talents, skills, and interests, a few of which are a voice teacher, and I found out recently a classical singer. that's something I want to do in my next life. So I hope I don't do death too quickly here, but I would like to do some singing in my next one. I understand you're also a retreat and guest house owner and involved in organic farming. A lot of stuff going on there today. But for today, we want to talk with you a little bit about your journey, a personal journey, very personal story that you shared with us about how you've come to really embrace death and see death as a gift. So with that, I'd like to ask you really our first question, and what brought you to this space, and what was the experience that got you interested in this topic, and is sharing that with us today.
Yeah, thank you first for having me in this show, because it's really, since my last, let's say, 2 experiences with this, it was really in me the desire to be in some way helpful to people who are dying, and to the people who have somebody in their near family who is dying. So for me, it has been a very long journey. It began when my grandfather died, and then he was away. Nobody really explained me. I was 12 or something, 11, 12, what that is. And then I grew a little bit in intellectual capacities, and it was about when I was 16 or 17. I entered into complete panic when I, with my mind, tried to figure out how it would feel not to be. I was in a space. It was horrible, and it was difficult to come out. I could come out by doing a composition in class, a sort of, how do you say, a paper. And I talked about that, and I got a good vote on it, and this was sort of the end of it. And then I knew there is something I have to figure out, but now I don't worry, I now live. And I thought, when you are 40 or something, then you can think about that. I'm much older than 40 now. So it was not so, because I was married with a man, and his stepmother had cancer. And I knew her quite well, and then I knew she was in the hospital, and when we went to see her, I couldn't recognize her anymore, and I was shocked. I was really shocked. I could recognize her only when she took on her glasses to read something. The face was so different, and I felt this complete helplessness, what to say, what to do. I just wanted to a hole in the ground, and I would like to disappear in there. Yeah. But I understood there must be a way to handle that. And then about maybe 3 or 4 years later, my father was dying on cancer also, and I lived far away. And before we were together still on a holiday, we knew that he was ill and probably wouldn't make it, but it was not so near yet. And then I went to see them, my family, and I saw my father, and he was all yellow in the face, and I knew this, you intuitively know that this is something else than an influenza or something. So I had the decision, should I go back far away where I lived and wait until the notice comes, or shall I stay there? And so I decided. It was a hard decision. I was 27 at that time. It was a hard decision, but I stayed there. And I was not yet really very much experienced in how to handle these things. And my mother did the morphine injections, and I helped her out, and I had turns with my sister, and actually I wasn't there in the moment when he died, but in the time when I was there, I was able to establish a relationship with him, which I've never had before, and which nobody of my family had, because everybody was concerned, how is that going, and is this one, and this wound, and this, and they were all in the outside, and the mechanics of this, but nobody really was able to get into contact. And I really was able to. I was astonished. This was a time, it was a precious time already then, although I didn't understand very much. It was like an eternity. It was only maybe 2 or 3 weeks I was there, but it seemed eternal. You know, we had the conflicts. My mother, for instance, when she did give the morphium, always the conflict, shall she wait until he has pain, allowing him to be awake, more alive, or shall she give him always this? So we were in this existential question, what shall we do with a person who is suffering? And I had an experience. My father had the intestine cancer, so he had a sac. I don't know how this is called for the you know, yeah. Okay, I don't know the words in English. So he had a sort of a belt to keep this on. And once I was responsible for his changing and everything in the evening, and in the morning he complained about pain. And I was so sorry about that, because I discovered that I had forgotten this belt. You can see that still
Sure.
making me emotions. And he was lying the whole night on 2 pins, sort of pins. And he couldn't move because he was unable anymore to move, you know. And for years and years I said, how could you do that? How could you forget that? You know, it took a long time to sort of forgive myself. It was this sense of making people suffer uselessly. And I was very happy that my father was at home and not in a hospital, because I think in a hospital with all these tubes everywhere, this is not a good way of dying.
That's how a lot of death is happening these days, is very medicalized or institutionalized.
It is horrible. It's really horrible, because, you know, you need, I think, you need a safety place, a safety space, and this is normally your home. And and not some people you don't know, you know, you need the people around you do know. There are some others who can come, but you need a relationship. And as I said, I was able to do that. And then his death, actually, I didn't see him die, and I was away for, my sister had taken over the turn. I was away for some days, and when I came back, he was dead. I didn't even see him in the coffin. So there was the funeral, but you know, you always can pretend that it's not true. And I was in a mindset which I couldn't handle that, and I sort of for many years pretended that he's just gone for a journey. I don't see him for a long time, but you know, I didn't accept this fact that he wasn't there anymore. I think I was about 40. To see that it is a fact, you know. And then I began with all this inner work and development, self-growth, and also with meditation and with coming nearer to the idea, oh, death, yeah, this is part of our life. And I began to understand in my mind at first that it is the fulfillment of our lives in some way. You know, and now I am of the idea I want to live and be fully conscious when I die. I want to really, you know, not be calmed down with something and then I don't even realize. I want to be able to observe it. But this is now. I want to tell you other two, if you want to, other 2 stories. The one is my mother. Yeah, my mother died. It's now more than 5 years
Heidi?
ago. Yes. Tell me.
I'm just wondering, before you jump into the story about your mother, there was a part in the story when you were speaking of your father where you said you turned away from death, you turned away from it, you turned away from it, and then there was a time where there was a decision that had to be made to either continue turning away from it or to go and be with him. And I'm wondering if you can share with us, what was it, or if you can recall back to that pivotal point in time that made you turn to face what you feared about death?
I think it was a sort of a responsibility and a sort of seeing that otherwise I would be selfish, just take care for myself and not going into the topic, you know. dragging myself out and pretending that, that nothing is going on and he will do whatever, there, far away. And afterwards, oh, yeah, here's that. So I thought this is really selfish. I tried to protect myself from a thing which is inevitable. And I somehow understood that this is not the way. That much later I came to the real understanding that when there are difficulties that we really need to go through them and not to avoid them. And this was really part of my decision. I say, no, you go. There was an inner voice who said, you go. You overcome this fear. You go and do that. And actually, as I said, I was very unconscious still, but it was an amazing experience. A really amazing experience. So.
Well, it sounds interesting. You say you may have been unconscious, but there was something speaking to you, as you said. There was also that ability to really listen to that small voice, because it would have been very easy for you not to go. And I think you mentioned you were at about age 27. Was that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because 27, I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine that decision. I, for some reason, had been really, in some ways, blessed. In some ways, maybe not so blessed when it came to death, because I didn't see my first, or go to my first funeral till I was about 24 or 25. And I didn't really want much to do with it then. So I really honor you for listening to that at a fairly young age and letting that inform, where you seemingly have taken your spirituality.
Yeah, and it was also that my mother went before that because she decided to have my father at home and not put him somewhere, and so she effectively she needed help. And I felt myself also called not to leave her alone in that. So there were several decision points,
Would you say that that experience, or the experience of death and dying in general, sort of started you on a trajectory towards spirituality, awakening consciousness? How did that affect your later experience and how you kind of show up now in the world?
Yeah, it definitely did. Not then, in that time. I still was not ready. I had to wait other, let's say, 15 years before I entered on some spiritual path. But it definitely did. This connection which I had with my father in the last days, this was something special. This was not what I ever have had before, I cannot describe it, but it was really from the heart in some way. And then I also, I was so struck by the fact, I had never seen that before. He tried to eat still by himself, and he, with a spoon, did that. He didn't find his mouth anymore. And I was so struck by what life is. So far, as you are young, you think you have these capacities all the time, and then you realize, no, you won't. So what you have now as capacities is, you're lucky that you have them, but it's not to be taken for granted. And this was a big insight, which in some unconscious level was really there, working later in me. I'm quite sure.
Yeah, there's one spot there when you were speaking, Heidi, and you were talking about the relationship that you were forming with your father nearing his last days. And what I observed was that when you spoke of this, you said it was hard to put words to, and your face really lit up when you spoke of this. And this is my experience from all the people I've talked to about death and dying, and during the last days, it's a very peaceful and it's such a time of really beyond words. It's something really special, and I guess I'm just wondering if you can speak more about the segue. How did you get into that space? How did you allow yourself to go there and be with him without all the kind of normal fears and stuff that we tend to shield ourselves with to block us from these deeper human experiences?
I don't think I can answer that. It just happened. You know, some opening, which I certainly had, and compassion. Also, you know, this wonder, how can that happen? You know, what is happening here? And then his helplessness and this desire to be there, you know, to be present. Probably, I say it now. I don't know what it was then. I don't know. But I already saw that it was something amazing because, you know, once a person came to see him, he had many friends before and people who he had helped. He was a politician. And when he was in this state, only one person showed up. And that was a person who he had helped before, who had overcome it was not a cancer, it was a tumor in his head. He had this tumor and there were no ways yet to operate them. And he had to wait 5 years until the techniques was, and with this horrible pain. And so sometimes he was not, in his work, he was not so good, let's say. And my father helped him with his bosses, big bosses of a bank, and reassured them that, you know, in some ways, that he could stay in the position. And this was the only person who came. And when he came, my father had such a flavor voice then in this. I'm completely emotional now. And when he came, he took out his normal voice as he was before. With this person for 20 minutes, he was like he was before. And then he went back into this, you know, already missing energy in his voice, in his way. It was impressive. And I'm curious. I'm also a curious person. This is also a part of it, you know. What is going on? What is going on there, you know? And at the same time, this feeling of, today I would call it sacredness. Yeah. Then I was not religious and things, so I wouldn't have called it like that. But today I would.
You know, it sounds like when you describe your being present, that what I heard a little bit of, and you even mentioned the word, was curiosity, which that drive brought you to a place of learning how to be present. And whatever that was that happened for you, it sounds like it did for you what you were describing, that you consciously believe that many of us would benefit from, and that is going through versus turning away or deflecting or finding a lot of reasons, because it is very easy, and I think this topic is one of those places where very few people have examined their feelings and beliefs and fears about that.
Absolutely.
And if they
absolutely. And I would,
death experience.
Yeah, I would say, I didn't have any help then, you know. I had no coach, no mentor, no psychotherapist or whoever, or somebody of hospice. No, it's now a big thing in hospice. Actually, when my mother died, there was somebody coming and helping us in this situation. But then it was too much for me and nobody there to help me. I had to help my mother, you know. Mm-hmm. So it was just too much. And so today it's so much easier, you know, to go through. And yes, go there. It is rewarding. It is rewarding. Otherwise, you will always feel this feeling of having, having missed that and having not done what you would need to do for the person and also for yourself. Sort of, I would have felt guilty if I hadn't gone there.
And so today, however many years later, you can say that you don't have regrets. And not only do you not have regrets, but you found this place that you probably would have never experienced had you not gone there.
Absolutely. And it inspired me to learn more about death and about life, you know, more about life, because they're so close together. And when my mother died, I was much better prepared. So it's a different story.
That feels kind of very similar when you talked about there was this sacredness or this exciting part or connection to this. I first got into the hospice business with a dear friend of mine who was suffering from cancer, and it was very, very sad but weirdly uplifting story. She was about 45 years old. She had 3 young boys, ages 13, 11, and 9. And she was diagnosed with end-stage lung cancer, not the smoker's kind, the kind, if you remember, that Dana Reeves had. And I was with her on the day that she got her diagnosis, and with her pretty much every day from diagnosis to death. And I was introduced to hospice and end of life, and that's how I came to this. I was scared, but I was drawn, and it was an interesting tension, I guess you could say, being scared and drawn, and it sounds like you had a very similar experience. I think, most people don't wake up and say we're going to, work in the end of life business without having some experience, and I believe, Myste, you had some experience that was, I can't say it's similar, but it also sort of started you on this path as well, didn't it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me it was when my mother passed last spring, and I had come to terms with death in my 20s, and it was like this big aha moment, and I realized that when I accepted my own death, that I was able to really step more fully into life. So that was a huge turning point sometime in my 20s. So I'd already accepted it personally, and when my mother passed, I had made peace with her, and she had been suffering for quite some time. So the story of her passing is very interesting. I see we're coming up almost close to our times, but I will share that with viewers one day. The biggest thing for me, and this was the pivotal point that brought me here, was that the depth of feeling that I was experiencing compared to the interactions, the communication, the dialogue, the words that people around me were speaking. For instance, I'm sorry for your loss, and the typical things that are said to someone who's lost someone. There was this, I saw this huge gap, huge, and for me it was like someone was massaging my heart, like literally. I was in awe, and Heidi mentioned this sense of just wonder and awe, and I was literally at awe at the depth of my feeling and how I had no idea I could feel so deeply, and I was kind of seeing myself like the observer, the higher self was kind of going, wow, this is a part of my human experience, and I had no idea I was capable of this. But the people around me, when, if I try to start communicating about it, walls would go up and they would be shut down, or there just wasn't too much room to really explore this. And that's why I love asking those questions about that space, and that's why I asked Heidi. And it's so hard to describe, but we don't really have in our language the words to describe the immense feeling and experience that's available to us at these times of tenderness and these times of deep feeling. And it's almost like everything else in your world just gets laid flat,
Mm-hmm.
and you really get to connect. Or for me, it really brought me to what was important. This is my life. It's going to have an end, and what do I want to do with it? And so that was when I started thinking, well, maybe my calling is to talk about this and to get people talking about it, and to take away some of the fears that are around talking about death. So that's part of my story and why I'm here.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you.
And knowing that there are people out here and emerging in this space who are here to support, who are here to comfort, to explore some of these deep feelings and these experiences that, as Myste, you said, really don't have a lot of words yet. I think what we're trying to do is really create a container for that, and a place to come, a safe place to land, if you will, for people who want to explore this in a safe and honoring way. And we feel like that's what has happened today with your story. And Heidi, it's just a pleasure to talk with you, and you can tell that it has informed your life so much that death has become a big part of life for you as well. So we thank you very, very much.
I thank you too, and I would like to tell you other 3 stories about that, but obviously the time is not over. But I want still to to sum it up. Excuse me. Some people do meditation practice for years and years and years to go into an altered state of consciousness. And I saw these 2 or 3 weeks I was closely with my mother when she died, hearing every breath, living every breath with her, and sleeping nearby and so on. This was an altered state of consciousness. It was like a continuous meditation, deep meditation. As you said before, Myste, the world sort of disappeared. It was only that. For me, it was eternity. And, not 2 or 3 weeks. It was like incredible experience. So no time, no space in your way. You just do and feel like this is an experience, for yourself. Very, very rewarding. And what you do for the other person, it's even, I don't want to say better, but it's the same level when you can give your internal support. Because when this space happens, your heart is open, and this is what people still can understand. My mother couldn't talk anymore and interact, but she felt it, and I know she did. This was a way of understanding which we often not have, and all the chatter and all the talks, normal day life is going. It is an experience. Don't fear it. Embrace it. It is a gift.
Wonderful.
I have to jump in because you described it wonderfully, Heidi. You really did. And I had the same experience when my mother was passing. There's that space in between, and it's surreal, and it's very deep, and you described it very well. I don't know if I can describe it either, but it's a spiritual space. It's a space of energy. It's a space of, I like how you said, like, it's kind of like a meditation. I remember the doctors called and they said, "Hey, Myste, it's probably just going to be 20 minutes now." So I said, "Okay," and luckily my young daughter was away at a friend, so I called a good friend of mine who's just kind of good at stuff like this. So, and we sat on Skype, and she held space. And this is the first time I'd heard of the concept holding space, but I got it, and we sat there and kind of waited. We were probably on the phone together for about an hour, but in holding that space, I felt there was a strong spiritual, energetic connection to my mother. And then my mother didn't pass, and she kept on for many, many days after. But during that whole time, and even after her passing, I was still holding space. I was in this space, and that's part of my draw to this topic as well. Is there's this space that's kind of indescribable but quite wonderful.
It's like you both described. It's like a meditation that keeps on giving, even after you've had the meditation, and it's hard to describe for others, but it's even harder to describe that when you're giving in that space, which feels effortless, you're getting back way more than you're giving. It's almost sometimes hard for your body and your psyche to hold all of this. And to me, it's that overflow, which feels like an abundance of amazing energy. And we could probably go on for more hours trying to figure out all the ways to do it. But I think some people, maybe even viewing this, have had the experience of being with someone, and it may not have been this beautiful. And I want to to mention that because I think people are at different places along their path when it comes to what we might call as death acceptance. And that's one of the things that we would do to encourage you to seek out hangouts like this and other resources that can help you really look at this in a different light. And I think that's what happened to me from going, like you, Heidi, very fearful when I was younger, to having a few experiences that just became awe-inspiring. And, you know, I'm sure on future shows we're going to be talking about, you know, when it's not so amazing like this, and that's a reality for some. And I just wanted to mention that there's some resources out there, and perhaps we can be one of them at some point.
Yeah. Wonderful. I just wanted to say, in the comment stream, I can see the comments. Sally Suember has joined us, and Marcus, good to see you, and Margarita, and Terry. Great to see these viewers. But I guess it says that I think we might be using Showcase. I tried my best to disable all these things so that comments would be available. So if comments have not been available, please accept my sincere apologies, and we will get this right for you next time. We'll do our best. So thanks to everyone who's watching us live, and thanks to you if you're getting the replay. And before we go, I would like to just mention our next interviewees, and that is the International Grief Council. This is a new council that's been developed with a friend and colleague of mine, Uma Garish, and she's a grief coach, and she is connected with Loanne Mayer, and Loanne is a healer. And the third person on this council is Daniela Norris. And Daniela has had a personal experience with loss, and from that, it has transformed her life and led her into this new calling. So we'll be having the three of those on our show next week at 3 p.m. Eastern on Thursday. And before I sign off, Heidi, thank you so much. As our first guest, you've really brought a lot of things home that I feel that the Death Chicks are about, and that's bringing the light and noticing the light and the beauties that are available at our endings. So, thank you.
Thank you for giving me the space.
Go ahead. I apologize.
I said thank you for giving me the space to talk in public about that, because it's really important for me too, because I see how people are so alone with that, and you are helping me to do the first step in my mission too in this direction. Thank you.
That's wonderful, Heidi. Thank you so much. And I would also mention that another thing that's so great about death is that you can hug and cry and nobody gets upset at the same time. So we thank you so much, and we're lucky like that. Not many people in their business day can hug and cry and it's all okay. So we're pretty thrilled with that. All right. Well, thanks again for viewing, and please come back. We will talk with you all soon. Thank you.